Hope you're having a good one so far, whatever it is you're doing today. Hopefully it's quite relaxing. Hope you're enjoying yourself. I wonder if you've been watching I'm a Celebrity. Well, there's one contestant that's getting particular attention 1 week in, and Caitlyn Jenner is winning fans and also getting some horrible abuse on social media. Now, she's been revealing how she dealt with wanting to dress as a woman in the late 80s, driving around late at night.
Running around town, driving around, doing all this sort of stuff. Nobody knew. I never met with anybody, basically,
By running around town, what do you mean?
Cross-dress, running around, all that kind of stuff.
So you would cross-dress in your car, drive around town.
I had, at that time, a turbo Porsche, and it was like a day before Halloween. And this car pulls up beside me, and it's my next-door neighbor.
Ooh.
How'd you style that one out?
Said I was going to a Halloween party.
Well, lots of reaction on social media to this. Well, let's talk to Katie Neeves, a trans ambassador who's been watching I'm a Celebrity. Katie, thanks for coming in. How do you think Caitlyn is actually doing in the jungle?
Well, right. Good morning, Rupal. I think she's actually doing remarkably well. Actually, she's a very high-profile celebrity in her own right, and she's been very, very open and very honest about being trans, and I think that's the best way. And certainly, whenever I've heard her speaking about being trans, I think she's actually done it really well. I mean, she's not universally liked within the trans community, but I think she's been very, very honest, and I think she's actually done us a great service, to be honest, because when she speaks, millions of people hear. When I speak, a handful of people hear. Apart from this morning, but you know what I mean. She's got a big reach, and I think that's a good thing.
You said she's not universally liked necessarily. Just explain that.
A lot of that, I think, is to do with her political views. I think so. I don't want to go sort of too much on that, but I think that's where a lot of that comes from. To be honest,
does her story connect with you, Katie?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I lived for nearly 50 years as a man, so I absolutely get that. And basically, what she was describing was gender dysphoria, which is a mismatch between how you feel in your head and your heart, as opposed to your sex characteristics and the label that you've been given at birth. And for most people, those two are in alignment, but for around about 1% of the population, there's a mismatch, and that is, and it's awful, and it's all consuming. It really takes over your life, and that it's a real feeling of unease, and some people get it really, really strongly from a very young age, and they're the ones that are self-mutilating and attempting suicide from a really early on.
So what was it like for you?
For me, it was a more gradual thing. It was right from an early age, but it wasn't so strong. It was from the age of about 3 or 4. I felt the need to cross-dress, and that went right on. Well, I didn't admit it to myself that I was a cross-dresser until my mid-20s. And then as soon as I did that, because there was a lot of guilt and self-loathing and shame, because you've heard all the jokes about cross-dressers, and they're still going now. And so that went on. And then actually when I did admit it to myself that I was actually just a cross-dresser then, the whole shame and guilt lifted, and it was fun, and it felt great. I was a man who needed to cross-dress, and that was all it was. And I never in a million years thought that I would then need to transition. But what happens with gender dysphoria, it can vary in strength, and it very often increases over time, and it's very common for it to increase, particularly in the late 40s, and that was very typical for me because I was 48 when that happened. And it increased just so dramatically, and I was in complete turmoil. I didn't know what gender I was at all. It was just awful, even to the point where I was typing into Google, what gender is Martin Neeves, because that was my old name, Martin. And I was typing into Google, what gender is Martin Neeves? Now, I know that sounds completely bonkers, but, when you're desperate, you do desperate things. And I knew that the answer could only come from me.
So, I mean, we've talked about, Caitlyn getting support, but she's also getting that abuse. People also talking about being dead named. I mean, explain what that means.
Dead naming is a lot of trans people call their old name their dead name, and most trans people wouldn't actually do as I just did just now and say my old name. I suppose, reasonably unusual in the fact that I'm completely comfortable with my old name, and I'm proud of everything I achieved as Martin, and I'm completely at ease with it all. But for, I would say, the majority of trans people, they're not, and they call it their dead name, and it's extremely rude, and it's upsetting to them to be dead named, and also misgendered. I mean, using the wrong pronouns. I had it recently actually on my Facebook account. I was just chatting about something else, and then somebody else came in and brought up Caitlyn Jenner and started referring to her as he and him, and it's just abuse. It really is.
Is that abuse necessarily, or is that people perhaps just not quite knowing what words to use, what the right words are to use?
I think it varies. I think it depends on the intent, and so if people are doing it deliberately, yes, it's abuse, and there's a small pocket of society who do it deliberately, but I don't know if have you heard of the term TERFs? TERFs. TERF, TERF. It stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists. So it's a group of anti-transgender people, and they were the people that actually walked in front of the Pride in London event last year, giving out anti-trans leaflets saying that transgender women are rapists, and they did. Yeah, I know, and they did the same thing at Manchester Pride this year as well. So they're a small minority, but they are very vocal, and so there's lots of them. They would be the ones who would be misgendering Caitlyn deliberately. Can I
ask, have you got children, Katie?
I have, yes.
Yeah, girls, boys. I mean,
a girl, but I don't really want to bring her into it, because I sort of promised her mum that I wouldn't bring her into the conversation.
I was curious because Kate, on I'm a Celebrity, Caitlyn, I think one of the questions that was asked was, do your children call you mum or dad?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can talk about that. Yeah.
And how does that work for you, Katie?
Well, my daughter calls me dad, and she's happy to call me dad. I'm her dad, but I'm female, and that's it. So that's all there is to it.
Look, I mean, what do you think is going to come out of the fact that Caitlyn Jenner is on the telly on a programme that's really massive? What are you hoping that'll achieve for trans people?
I'm just really hoping that it just sort of gets the word out there more, and gets more awareness. I mean, there's been more of that happening over the last 5 years anyway, and there's a few of us trans ambassadors who are doing this sort of thing, and it needs more of us really. But the more we do it, the more acceptance there is, and I think a lot of prejudice and bigotry comes out of a fear of the unknown. So if you can take that unknown away, then that's got to be a good thing, because I think the more education there is, the more acceptance there will be, and the more acceptance there will be, the easier it would be for trans people to admit to themselves they're trans in the first place, because that's the hardest thing, and then to actually come out as being trans and publicly, and then just to live their lives and just to live their lives in peace, because it is okay to be trans, and so many trans people don't know that, and they beat themselves up about it, and they say that's why the suicide rates are so high. But and that's why I'm on a bit of a mission to let them know that it is okay, and also to help educate the general public.
And you regularly speak. You're quite open and quite honest, and
absolutely,
regularly go to events and things where you talk about it openly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just been booked to be a keynote speaker at an NHS conference on diversity and inclusion in Leicester in March. But I've actually got a free workshop I'm doing in Leicester on Tuesday evening. It's for the EDI network, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Network. So it's on how to be a trans ally. So if anybody wants to come along on Tuesday evening, if they go to edinetwork.co.uk, they can get their free tickets.
Lovely to see you, Katie. Thanks very much indeed for coming in and joining us on the programme. Katie Neeves here on BBC Radio Leicester. 18 minutes past 8. Don't forget, we'll bring you up to date with the latest weather forecast, hopefully after this.